when I think about what I think is not going to change in research, I think that there's been a lot of focus on secondary data sort of overtaking or replacing quantitative data collection. And I think, I think there's some real valid arguments for that. What I don't think is going to go away anytime soon are qualitative methods, or even some of the new qualitative methods that are being used in a quantitative setting. I don't think that there's a whole lot of substitution for talking to a respondent and seeing their reactions to concepts, ideas, having that one-to-one contact or being able to see people's facial expressions, I think are really, really powerful in terms of conveying what people really think and really feel about a particular subject. So I am hoping and predicting that will not change in the next 5 to 10 years.
One thing that's never going to change, and one thing that we always go back to, is the client. The client will always be there. Now, the profile of that client will change over time, and we need to be mindful of that. And by the change we apply to the industry, we'll push that change on what that client looks like. So, for example, that client should have different personas. That will be not just the insight person, but our client will be the marketing person. Our client will be a business analyst. But also, buyers of research and that client tends to be the large advertisers. However, that client should, through technology and automation, should make research affordable to a smaller size business. So it should open up that client base, but that client will always be there. And the need for information, the need for insight will not change, which means that role of the researcher will always be there. It will evolve, and the opportunity through technology for that research will be a focus on the so what and the consultancy, which we've always wanted. But fundamentally, that exchange of the researcher and the client will always stay there.
In my lifetime and my career in market research, we've seen things go from, telephone interviews through caddy centers to online questionnaires, and to things being done sort of exclusively, through the computer. And now everything has switched to mobile. So what I won't think will change is people self-reporting. I think to some degree we've had for a long time the ability to rely on behavioral data as opposed to self-reporting, and there's always sort of mixed feelings about whether people self-report accurately. But I think there will always be a need for people to self-report. Additionally, I think that the human component won't change. So we need people to help us bring the stories to life that we are able, even when we are able to capture the data digitally or through, big data and tracking their actual behavior online and everything else. We really need to keep the personalities of people involved. We need to hear from their perspective why they do things, and we need to use them to bring all of this data to life. So I think we'll always need people.
Yes, I believe there is something really unique about market research, and it's this art that market researchers have developed of hybridity, meaning learning constantly about new discoveries on human behavior, about technology, new protocols, and combining those things together to come up with very unique ways of learning more, learning deeper. So I'm thinking about combinations of quantitative and qualitative, human observation and ethnographics and hard data, and even wearable data, new ways of understanding the human reactions and behaviors, neuroscience, behavioral science, and combining that with artificial intelligence. When it comes to analysis, how do you combine machine-based and human-based analysis to come up with better results? And that's pretty much the art and science of market research, coming up with those hybrid approach, elegant approaches that's pretty much their craft. So I will say hybridity is here to stay.
I think the importance of the researcher isn't going to change. So I do think that there might be some changing of job roles and responsibilities. And I think that automation and AI are going to come in and replace certain things in certain parts of our processes. But I do think that the researcher is always going to be a necessary part of the process. Maybe that's going to be different than what it looks like today, but I do think that researchers are still going to be necessary. Something else I think that is not going to change in the next 10 years is this sort of awkward pseudo-resistance to change that the market research industry is famous for. We are behind a lot of our brother and sister industries who have fully embraced technology and who have been progressing and moving forward. And, you know, we've seen some evolutions and we've seen some new tech come up as well. But then once they get there, they're a bit slow to continue to evolve. And I think a lot of people are quick to embrace the idea of technology, but not quick to actually adopt and use it, because it's hard to break out of our old habits. And I think that will probably be the same. I think we'll continue to evolve at a slower pace than I would hope for us.
I think, you know, the AI is a term that's being thrown around fairly loosely at the moment. We're in this kind of big kind of peak of expectation of where it can deliver. A little bit like we were with big data maybe 5 years ago, and then what happens is you get this kind of trough of disillusionment when it doesn't live up to it. But in the short term, it may not do what we think, but in the long term, I really believe that it's going to change things. But certainly, as we look at the next 5 to 10 years, I think the human element of research is going to be so important, enabling people to interpret that data. I think lots of we're already seeing lots of different changes to things like, you know, brand trackers and other parts of things that are all having to change because of changing consumer behaviors. You know, people aren't going to take these 20-minute surveys and things like that. So I think there's a lot changing in that area. But I think for me, the thing that will remain true is this kind of human requirement.
In my opinion, survey research is not going to disappear over the next 10 years. Neither will grid questions, and neither will the need for insightful and curious researchers to interpret the data and recommend actionable insights to their clients.
I think 90% of organizations succeed despite their research departments. I really do believe that. And despite their innovations departments, I think they just succeed. They just grow. People want to buy stuff that's reasonably priced and does the job, and that's how companies grow. Everything else is kind of fluff.
Clients expect to have data, in pieces. They want their business problems solved rapidly. They want to know what's going on, and they want to know now. And as such, I think that research budgets will be allocated and continue to be allocated on a bit-by-bit basis, and they will be looking for companies that are agile and able to provide insights in real time that are incredibly insightful and impactful to the organization and have real-time meaning. Beyond that, I think social media is not going away either. I can look at my teens and see that and their friends, but beyond that, there's a plethora of data out there at our fingertips that will continue to need to be analyzed and reviewed to have an impact on brands and organizations, and of course, the same old. Research needs to have a tangible return on investment in order to continue to have a place.
What you can see behind me in my back garden is a monkey puzzle tree. I'm sure you all know the history of a monkey puzzle tree. It's a tree that's so hard to climb that even a monkey can't do it. It's a puzzle. That's the one thing that's not going to change. Not monkey puzzles, but business puzzles. Businesses are still going to have problems that need research, that need consumer insight, and need our support to help solve them. Artificial intelligence, the singularity, all the technology innovations, they're all going to help us, but fundamentally, businesses are going to have puzzles that need answering, trees that need climbing, and they're going to need our help.
One thing that we will continue to see is the trend towards automation, with the increased need from clients to have access to faster results, to more agile studies, But this said, something that will not change is the need, on one hand, to trust in the data and to trust, on one hand, in the source of the data and in the process of acquiring this data. And on the other hand, the need from clients to have insights and to understand the implications of this data. And this will not change. And this can take the form, on one hand, of having very solid benchmarks, which allows clients to understand what a given piece of result, a given piece of data means. Or on the other hand, the ability from market researchers to build narratives around the results, to build stories, to try to make clients understand actually the implications of this, and to build some meaning around this data.
I think in the next 10 years, one of the main fundamental thing that isn't going to change is our clients' need for insight. And I don't think that they're going to be able to get that insight from artificial intelligence, from big data. I still think that there's going to be a need for high quality market research practitioners being able to observe and ask questions that are going to get clients the answers that they need to help them make better business decisions.
What is not going to change is we have an ongoing need for valid and reliable measurements of consumer opinions. That will not change. We also have a huge need for better tools. So we have a lot of fabulous, really cool tools right now, face-to-face, small research, panel research, neuro techniques, biometric techniques. All this stuff is really good. But no matter how new or old a technique is, we always need to find ways of making it better, more valid, more reliable. And then on top of that, we will always need genuine engagement with our audience, with target consumers. I think in many cases we get down to the methodology, we get so detailed in what we're doing, the techniques, and is it valid and reliable, that we forget there's a human being on the other end. We start treating them as part of the machine. So we really need to keep on working towards engagement. We must always have that focus in the work we're doing, to see people as real people, not just bots on the other end. So that's what I think is not going to change over the next 10 years.
In our world, as we capture more and more data and more technology comes in someone's phone or into the watch, it's really about how to capture that information and getting more data from what you're doing. So in our world today, we're going to capture video or a photo, and we're asking specific questions. What did you think about a certain product, or how did you use that product inside of your home? But what you're starting to find with photo recognition, image recognition, kind of the artificial intelligence that's out there today, you can actually take a photo today, and while we're capturing it for one question, you can now start to mine that just the way we've been mining data over the last 5-10 years.
Quite simply, I think the need for people. No matter how much we talk about automation, no matter how much we talk about big data, the explosion of information, the proliferation of data sources, ultimately, somebody has to decide what data is relevant to the question at hand, what rigor, what appropriate rigor either needs to be applied or to ensure that it has been applied to the data that's going to be used, and then ultimately be able to translate that data into the context of whatever the question at hand is that needs to be answered. And I think that automation and artificial intelligence will certainly speed up the processes, may even help the filtering out or the selection of the data types to be used. But ultimately, people will have to decide whether or not the data is appropriate. People will have to decide whether the story can be told in a way that is acceptable and digestible to the necessary and relevant audience. And ultimately, people will have to implement whatever solution is deemed to be optimal. So technology will always and continue to be a great support and will help that support to evolve and speeden up. But the one thing that will never change is the need for a good market research professional, somebody who knows data and can understand it, to be at the helm of the information or the insights.
The first thing that I don't think is going to change is the questions that clients ask. They're still going to have some of the same business questions, like where should I be spending my marketing money? What will change is probably the metrics that they use to evaluate this. And we've already seen brand consideration being questioned by many clients. I also noticed in a Harvard Business Review article in which Keith Weed from Unilever contributed that they were actually saying share of experience will become the metric of the future. The second area that I don't think will change is that we will continue to have an obsession with data quality. And this is going to be vital because we're going to have so many different data sources that we can use. So ensuring that we get really good data quality and understand what's meaningful within this data is going to be important. But the most important, and the third point that I'd like to make, is that we still need to understand people. We need to understand the detail of the experiences they're having, of their lives, because it's only through this that we'll be able to help our clients in a much more demanding area to grow meaningful brands for the future.